Well, guys, firstly, a big thanks for those who've been able to jump online directly, but understand certainly with the time of this one, which we're playing around with a little bit, that people will come on at a later point or watch this webinar back. So, yeah, it's the latest one in our internal coach development. It's it's an area where I personally have a lot of interest and intrigue and have done over a number of years. And yeah, I think a lot of the what we'll speak about here is really valuable for obviously our players, but even as coaches, I think becoming aware of this part of development, human development, is not something that's spoken a whole lot about in our formalized coach education. So really, we kind of need to go away and invest the time and energy into these sort of areas. And hopefully, the next hour or so is to provide you with a taster of some of that stuff. I've been able to collate a lot of my reading and research and notes and environments I've been a part of into this sort of presentation. But really, it's about trying to stimulate further thought, provide you some ideas to test out with your players, and then maybe go away and think about how I can access some even more of this and apply it to our environments. So let me just share my screen. What can you guys see? Just the front page, or you can see the notes and stuff as well?
Notes, we can see the notes.
Okay.
Our next slide, click add notes. Yeah.
All right. I'll try and do it out of presenter view then, just might be a bit cleaner. So we'll see how we go. Okay, so a lot of this information is the work of Dan Abrams, a pretty notable sports psychologist out of the UK. Spent time through football and has worked with a lot of Premier League players as well as in the golf space. And he's written three really, really easy to read and compelling books around sports psychology and mental skills. So I've seen that first book around. That sort of was my starting point, my exposure point to a lot of this information, and I'll share with you some other resources at the end. I put this particular presentation together to address these ideas directly to players. So if I kind of speak as if I'm speaking to you as a player, please, I apologise for that, but it gives you a bit of a taster and some ideas for you to start thinking about and how you might apply them to your players as well. So let's crack on. So firstly, I won't spend too long on this sort of stuff. It's a little bit of an intro, but we're speaking about he's not mentally tough enough. I'm assuming we've all heard people, probably ourselves as well, say that about players. But I guess the earliest question would be, well, what actually is mental toughness? Has anybody got an idea or a description or a statement that they can kind of share with how you would perceive mental toughness is?
Maybe resilience to be able to bounce back
Okay.
from setbacks.
Yep. So resilience will be in there for sure. Yeah. Anybody else?
I think performing under pressure, like to your capabilities as well, in addition to resilience.
Yep. Cool. I like that. Yeah. So the ability to perform to your best regardless of the situation is kind of how I loosely describe it as well. So probably a combination of both yours there as well. So I guess what is a mental skill then? Has anybody want to have a stab at a mental skill?
Ability to ground or reset after a mistake.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Maybe concentration be one, and yeah, concentration.
Okay, I think a skill would be classed as it's a particular type of technique. So technique which we can employ to become better at performing under regardless of the situation. So if I say mental skill is a skill, so definition of a skill being something that can be learnt and improved and developed over time, I guess my question is how many of us are actually developing the mental part of it? And you'll have your own reasons why and why not. But if you think about the lens of if you're addressing this with your players, you can ask your players as well, how many of you are working on the mental space of your own game, of your own athlete profile, athlete development. So just the same as, we get the kids into the gym and work on specific things. We work on the training pitch on other techniques, i.e. shooting. We use the analysis tool for tactical understanding. But we quite often miss this fourth bottom corner, the mental space. Now, why is that? Well, quite often because it's not taught to us as coaches in coach education. So therefore, we maybe don't have the confidence or the depth of knowledge in this particular area to then pass it on, because we don't want to damage the players, and that's a legitimate fear, I think. But equally, it's easier to spend our time and probably our energy, and unless you have a real passion for the mental space and the tech tack. We have experts, sports scientists, physios to come in and work around the physical, but it's also very difficult for us to get access to experts in the mental space to come in and spend time with our players. I know in the academy we're fortunate to have access, but not in great depth around that sort of space. But it is a part of the athlete's journey and athlete's development. So if we're excluding one quarter of a four corner model, then we're really not providing the athlete to the next level, the next stage, as equipped as we can. So this is about providing some really tangible mental skills that we as coaches can become aware of and then start to embed in our trainings, our sessions, our games, our seasons, to hopefully help improve that mental piece of the athletes at all ages that we work with. So just the same as, we go to a physical gym, let's start trying to get our athletes to think about going to a mind gym. So gym for their mind, strengthening their mind. So kind of summarize it already, but some of you would have seen the conscious competency model. So firstly, if you don't know what you don't know. So if you don't know much about the mental skills, then you're unconsciously incompetent at it. You don't know that you're shit at it, basically. So the idea here is to shift you along this continuum that shortly you will become more aware, more conscious, but you're still incompetent at delivering these skills to our players because it's brand new information. We don't have the depth of experiences in that space, but hopefully I'm trying to allow us to become a little bit more conscious in this. And for those who have had a little bit of experience in the mental skills and not necessarily just with Dan Abrams' work, but other sports psychs, then you want to start to test and deliver an action upon these things, and you become consciously competent at it. You are better, but you are having to think about it as part of your planning. And the higher stage of this is unconscious competence. You do things automatically without thinking about it. It's part of your habits, your routines. You don't need a manual. You don't need to be sort of shown how to do things. You've developed this over time. So same with our players, trying to develop all of the competencies within our game. You could also break that down to the competencies within those four corners. Same for us as coaches. So this is the easiest way that I consider this and would teach this to the players. So the brain is effectively our boss. If you cut our head off, sever the brain from the body, then the body won't function, right? So the body is the boss. So the body will impact the brain as much as the brain will impact the body. So without getting in all the neuroscience and all the little details that PhDs and doctorates and everything that goes into this sort of space, the way I would describe it to athletes is think of the brain will release hormones to our body. Now that could be good hormones or that could be bad hormones. So good hormones that help us run faster, run longer, run quicker, stay focused, adrenaline, serotonin, dopamine, testosterone, etc. But there's also bad ones like cortisol and other, again, without going into the detail, other hormones that will counterbalance some of the good stuff. So I guess our job as coaches, but equally your job as an athlete, if you're talking to your athlete, is can I put as much good hormones into my body? Can I release as many good drops as possible and have zero, ideally, or few drops of bad hormones? So more good and obviously less bad. That's the whole purpose. So the inside, the brain, will drive the outside, our actions and our performances. So through here, there's, I think, 11 different skills or techniques, which I'll kind of whiz through and I'll stop and ask some questions and stuff. But again, this will get us thinking. All this information has come from these books, which you can go and get some more further details on as well. So first one is your body will impact your mind as much as your mind can impact your body. So if you just think about, I've gone for a run. So I've physically gone and done something, and then whilst in the moment that could be quite challenging and taxing, how do you often feel after it? Or it could be a workout, or I've gone and done an activity, and then the release of, let's just call them good hormones, serotonin, for example, makes you feel good for doing that physical activity. I think everybody, I'm sure you can all think of different moments where you do that. Sometimes, you might have exerted yourself to a point where you are, incredibly fatigued, but shortly after that runner's high, for example, will stay with you. So that's just an example of reflecting that, the body can have that positive impact on the mind as much as it can have a negative impact. So here's a couple of really simple techniques where we're utilizing the body to impact the mind. So the first one is the BAM technique, so body action movement, where you're putting your body into action to, I guess, limit negative hormones and potentially have some positive hormone release. So I think of basketball. So after every free throw in basketball, what happens? It's a question to you guys.
They go high five each other. All the teammates go in and high five or touch each other after the free throw, right?
Yep. So everybody makes contact with that free throw, whether they make it or they miss. Now, I often wondered, kind of why. And then, I think about like rugby league. Someone drops the ball, right? It's a knock on, so scrum the other team, but they all get around them and pat on the back. And what those two examples are doing is it's coaches have trained the athletes that by putting your body into an action, which going to low five, pat on the back, whatever, it's actually tricking the brain. That it's stopping the brain releasing a negative shit. I made a mistake. I missed this free throw. I'm shit. Negative sort of spiral of, let's just say, bad hormones. By going and doing this action actually stops that release of that particular hormone. So body action movement is a really powerful one, and you see it, now that you become aware of it, you'll probably see it a lot more than you thought of in the past. But it's a really simple one that we can help our athletes. You miss a shot, or same as a goalkeeper makes a save, like go and like high five the keeper. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. It could be a positive thing. It gives you an extra positive injection of that positive hormone. So it's a really simple one. The other one, so you can call that BAMming. So the action, the doing of the thing, BAM. The other one is power pose. So there was some research done in the US, 20 years ago at least now, where they took a sample group and a test group, and they went and did a job interview. So the sample group just did the normal job interview, and then the test group, for 2 minutes prior to going into the interview, they were asked to go and lock themselves in like a toilet cubicle and strike and hold a powerful pose, whichever they meant for them. So you think of the Superman there, like hands on hips, chest out. The Superwoman, like fist out. A powerful action. Hold that for 2 minutes, and then go and do your interview. And what they found is the second group had greater articulation. They had better body posture. They held eye contact more. They answered the questions with, I guess, greater levels of clarity and detail. All in all, were better candidates than the group that didn't perform this power pose. So it's just another example of how potentially manipulating your body can release some of those good hormones to have a positive impact or effect on the mind and how we can do things. So technique one, move your body to change your chemical makeup in your favor. So, yeah. Now, potentially, I might have lost some of you already, or you might have questions, or you're confused. If anybody, again, has any questions, please just stop me. I can't actually see anybody on the screen, so just jump in and we can kind of talk through this. I'm not an expert in this. I have passion. I've used some of these now for more than 10 years. I do have the literature and other resources, so I'll share as much of that as possible. But again, if you're confused or lost or unclear, don't be afraid to stop me, and we can do a little bit slower. Next one, question to you: what is the only thing you can genuinely control?
Your own thoughts and performance, I would say.
You can control your performance.
And your thoughts.
Okay. Anybody else?
How you react or don't react to a situation, or anything that I guess occurs in front of you on the pitch.
Yep, nice. So again, it's a really good. I'm assuming, again, depending on the number of contact points you have with your players, it's a bit easier to do than not with others. But certainly making your players aware that not everything is actually in your control. The opponent, the referee, the weather, decisions, selection. That's not in the control of the athlete. You can influence some of those things. Like you can influence the decision of Stan to start you or not through things that you can control: your attitude, your behaviour, your response, your mindset. I'm challenged a little bit to think that my performance is in my control, because I can't control the opponent. So if I control the opponent, put in a really good time tackle versus not, that could have an impact on my output, my performance. So yeah, some things there to think about. But certainly, the way Kate described it is a good one. So the way that you react to all of those things that are out of your control is absolutely in your control. So the way that other people's effort, could really piss me off, but that's my decision to be pissed off by that. I could actually see it through a different lens and go, the person's effort's poor. Why is it poor? Maybe they are struggling. They don't understand. Can I maybe offer my assistance? Can I ask them questions? Can I show them how to do it? Can I have a conversation with them which may improve their effort? Just by accepting that their effort is their effort, and it's not up to my standards, I can still do that, but I can also change how I react to that. So trying to get our players, and even us as coaches, right? We can be influenced by the opposing dugout sometimes, but you can't control that. So why allow an opposing coach or bench to rattle you and get under your skin, and therefore your output to your players is negatively compromised because of that. So yeah, I think my reactions, my responses, my techniques, my game plans, my roles, responsibilities, it's me. It's all on me. Focusing on yourself doesn't mean to completely ignore the other things, but focus on what is in your control. So yeah, it's a really simple one. Focus on you, control the controllables. Choose not to allow the non-controllables to affect you, but it's a really difficult thing to do all the time unless we practice it. So it's coming back to that conscious competency. We're aware of these things now, but are we actually starting to work on them? Are we building them into our week? Are we factoring in gym time, mental gym time, brain gym, whatever you want to describe it, into our sessions, into our weeks? Because if we don't practice these things, we won't improve them. But we know that they are really important. Okay, so future, looking ahead, present, the now, and then past, looking back. So I guess my question is, where do you think our focus should be? Or where do you think the athlete's focus should be? And you can come up with a situation.
I'm going to say present.
All the time?
I think if you're not present, then you're not actually taking in the data to then think of the future. So if you're constantly in the future, or you're thinking of the future while things are going around you, it's not really going to help the situation. So you have to be present in what is going on in the now, and then react to that. Yes, at times you may potentially, I guess, read the game, etc. You're only reading it by being present in the situation you're playing in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I agree. Anybody else got any thoughts?
I think I mostly agree with that, like to stay mindful in a way, but also if you make a mistake, that's also in the present. And then that's the only time maybe you can focus on the next action. It's almost like, okay, I've made a bad pass, not to dwell on that, and I focus on the next pass, and that would be like the immediate future. Um, yeah, that's just my thoughts within game, I would say.
Yeah, no, I like it. So, you could say that, every second gives you opportunity. Every minute you've got multiple opportunities to train this as well. So certainly in matches, or even in the training session, the focus should be on the present, because what's happened behind in the past you can no longer change, and what's to come in the future, well, that's still less important than the here and now. So let the coach, this is again talking about players, let the coach focus and stress about the past and the future, and just keep staying present. But maybe there's opportunities at half time or a drinks break, where the game has stopped or paused for a minute, where we can quickly reflect on the past or look ahead to the future. Like, oh shit, the opposition's doing this. What does that mean for us in terms of an in-game adjustment? Or the first half, this we taught us these things, and it's really important to actually reflect back on that past, or even, match day +2, let's do a review on the past, and then how does it impact the future. But certainly keeping our minds closer to the present, I would say right on the edge of present and future, is where athletes, the best athletes live. They're anticipating, they are reading the game, they are searching for opportunities or weakness or moments that are yet to occur. So you kind of got to have a little bit of, towards that future space, but soon they're letting go of the past, because the past will slow you down. If you're worrying about, my mistakes and my regrets, that's going to, have negative hormones released. It's going to physically slow you down. So technique 3, again, focus on the present. So again, having that constant, part of our coaching vocabulary, like let go of mistakes, finding time to put aside reflection time, and also finding time to think about the future. So yeah, focusing on the present. And this is a really easy and good technique to use, which is called the script. So an athlete script, so again, it helps athletes avoid becoming distracted, either with the non-controllable things we looked at, or if your mind is not living in that present moment. So again, thinking about mistakes, thinking about things that they can't control yet or have already happened. So the idea here is you can have a training script and a match script. With both of those, you want to think about what is my tasks, what are my responsibilities, what is my coach needing of me or my team wanting from me throughout the game, really, or throughout the training. So how am I going to prove that's relevant to me within the team confines? But my tasks as a striker could be very different to Tom's. Well, will be very different to Tom's as a goalkeeper, for example. So a script will enable an athlete to go onto the pitch with real clarity around what is needed from them, and if we can keep those tasks as things that are in their control, then it allows them to check back and be specific with that as well. So we do this. You'll see this. This is a rugby player. You see this quite often. These photos are 10 years old now, but certainly now that these are everywhere. So professional athletes on bandages that are used for strapping, or even just on their arm, they'll have words, they'll have a symbol, they'll have something to help focus on either ambition or what gives them their strength and their power to go and do what they need to do. But sometimes it's about their task. So we did this with New Zealand under 17s years ago. Everybody strapped up, put their script on their hands, on their arms. So when they're not going to run around watching their arm the whole time, but when the ball's out for a throw in, or it's a corner, or they have a 3 seconds within their own kind of positions where they're walking around, they can actually check back in and go, am I on task here? Am I doing what I've said I've done? So, for example, training script can be, because it's less critical than the game, it can be a lot more descriptive, a lot more wordy. So Dan Abrams will talk about, writing, create an Oscar with your script, have a real detailed, really feel what's required of you in that team. So the example I use is a striker, so number 9. So conversation with the athlete. What do you feel, your strengths are? What do you think we need from you in this team? Obviously, the coach will say, look, I really want you to be, can't be lazy, you got to be making heaps of runs. So there's going to be an element of the coach helping drive this, but it's more power when the athlete starts to take ownership on all of these sort of things. So you need to have those conversations. So as a striker, non-stop movement might be one of the 3 tasks that this particular player wants to work on or feels she needs to work on. So what does that mean? So write it out. Non-stop movement. Pay attention to finding space. Never a lazy moment. That was something that she came up with. What are you currently? How would you rate that currently? She had a 5 out of 10. Why is that? I don't often look around enough to find the space, for example. It's a developing player. So again, there's some give and take, and there's some planning around what this looks like, but that would end up potentially on her training script. The difference between a training script and a match script is you want it to be really short, sharp, and succinct. So we kind of distilled that down to be like a shark, basically. So a shark is somebody that if stops moving, falls asleep or dies. I can't remember which one it was. I think it might be dies. If it gets flipped upside down, it falls asleep. So it needs to be constantly on the move, but it doesn't always move at the same pace. So it's slow, and when it's ready to pounce, boom, it strikes with real rapid pace. So she came up with, I'll be like a shark. So her match script was shark-like, and then it was like killer instinct. So really prepared to put her body on the end of a cross if and when needed to help the team score the goal. So I guess what this is providing us is when there's those down moments within games or trainings, they have something tangible that they can go back to that's relevant to them, their task, their responsibility, and to act in the now. They can forget that shot that I missed, and it's about, okay, I need to be like a shark. I need to get back on the hunt. I'm on the prowl. So again, trying to tie in those last 3 or 4 things where, is it controllable? Yeah, you can control your output, your movements. You can be lazy, or you can keep making more runs. You can scan and be aware of surroundings, or you can only follow the ball around. So that is something that was within the control of the athlete. And it's helping her focus on the now, as well as helping her perform and the team perform. Thoughts? I won't get everybody to do an activity around that, but yeah, thoughts around the script.
Yeah, I did one of those scripts quite a few years ago at one of my MPL clubs, and I found we did a match script, not a training script. And I think in one of Dan Abrams' book, he spoke with Yannick Balassi. I think that was like the reference. And then he used like Act Ronaldo. So at the time, I think it was like 2017, 2018. Ronaldo still is one of the greatest players ever. But talking about his body language, his stature, it's like, and he spoke about like that Superman pose, like he's almost Superman himself on the pitch. And I think we used that with a couple of our players, and I felt like it worked well. His body language was a big thing, as we weren't winning many games at that point. So, yeah, we did it with under 14s, and it worked really, really well at the time. And then I was on my Twitter phase, and I actually shared it to Dan Abrams, and then he commented and reshared it, which was pretty cool.
Nice. What other times or places do you think athletes can have a script?
I think from a football perspective, like obviously match training, but also just like upon arrival. Do you know what I mean? Like as soon as you jump out of the car, it's like you need to be acting in a certain way, behaving in a certain way. It's like, how are you walking?
I think maybe when they're talking to, I didn't understand, maybe when they're talking to the media, perhaps the ones that are facing media script what they want to communicate and not necessarily have a story that they want to convey and not necessarily be controlled by external factors.
Yeah. So I guess think back to what is a script, right? It's a series of words that it's been prepared. So the idea is to think about what's been required, prepare it, write it down, have it ready. Maybe it's, something that the coach can provide, the player. I just want you to do this one thing, and we print it off and it's in their locker room. This is the one thing you need to bring to life. This could be your X factor, or this is the key to unlocking the game this particular week. You might have a team script, and we do this through our team talks, right? But I think the power of giving responsibility to the athlete, and if they don't want to write it on their own, no problems. But you can have it in the locker room, and then we used to say, first 3 minutes of half time is your time. Go to the toilet, get drinks, whatever. But sit in your cubicle and reflect on your script. Like, are you doing what you said you were going to do? Like, rate yourself out of 10 of first half, go into your script. Just do your job. Don't worry about trying to do everybody else's job. Are you doing what you collectively have agreed to focus on? Yes or no? And if not, why not? And again, that sort of takes some of the responsibility away from the coaches to get all of this collection of individuals pointing in the right direction. You're starting to give them a little bit more thought. But again, I think the training script's a step towards this. If it just happens on a match day, well, we train 2 or 3 times per week. Well, you're missing 2 to 3 more times to practice. The ability of checking in, focusing on self, focusing on the present, getting back to task. Again, these are all opportunities for us to improve and enhance that mental space, which we know has an impact on performance space. But yeah, technique 4, design a script and take control of the building blocks for your game. Design scripts that reinforces your tasks for the team. So they need to be relevant. Can't just be general. They need to be controllable, ideally, but certainly linked to players' tasks. Imagery and visual thoughts and things like this. So there's, again, not my greatest area of experience, but again, research will tell us a few things. So there is a couple of things called dream game and racetracks. So I think like building a habit, building a new technical skill, right? I don't know what's relevant, brushing your teeth, right? So to start off with, it's, somebody else is brushing your teeth with your toothbrush for you. And then you might be holding the toothbrush, but mum or dad's holding my arm, and they're moving my arm to brush my teeth. Then eventually you're brushing your teeth, but toothpaste is getting everywhere. I think my wife's still at that stage, to be honest. And then you get to the next stage where you can brush your teeth without toothpaste falling out everywhere. And then, you can gargle. And, the more you do a technical skill, the stronger that technique and skill becomes. So think of it like a racetrack. The first step is you just walking through the grass, and you might, trod down some weeds or grass or flowers. And then over time you do it, enough times that becomes a dirt track. And then over more times it becomes a big rut, and you might put some stones to pave out that path. And then over time you might concrete that. So it's building a racetrack in our brains with our skills. So start off with just a trodden grass, and then it grows all the way up to a physical racetrack where cars are racing around that because it's paved with concrete. So same thing with all these mental skills. The more we do that, the more deeply ingrained our habits become. So similarly with our imagination around dream game, again, there's some research will say through different fields and areas, if you spend time, or you can spend time in a quiet space, close your eyes, and really visualize something. Let's just call it a performance, a football performance in our context. But if you have real depth to your imagination, you're smelling the grass, for example, you're feeling the opponent as he kind of runs past you, you're hearing the crowd, like the real deep layer of connection, feeling all these sort of sensations. Your 15 minutes of thinking and working through ideal, optimal performance has a positive impact on real performance. And there were some studies done that highlighted the fact that 15 minutes of deep dream game had the same positive kind of improvement on a skill than 15 minutes of training it, which I find is absolutely unbelievable. If I can just sit and think and visualize, is the same as me actually practicing it and doing it. So it's not going to be instantaneously. I'm sitting 15 minutes and I can drive a race car, Formula One race car, without even stepping into the cockpit. Probably not going to work quite to that level, but by something that you're already reasonably competent at, i.e. football, you can invest 15 minutes in your own time in the hotel room before the match, and in the bed, the night before, thinking about it as much as you are on a training field. Which is, if we can maximize all of our additional time away from, just the training that we do, we can still improve. It's a really powerful weapon and tool within our training load. Again, I'll send you the research around that as well, because it's pretty interesting. But certainly getting our athletes to think about their dream game, but with real detail, like what is, think about the best performance you've ever played, relive those moments, what was really positive about it, like where were you, how fast were you running, what did the ball feel like when it left your foot, and getting athletes to sort of articulate in their own mind and rehearse dream game helps that memory, helps that motor neuron pathways within our body, and it actually has a similar impact to physical training. So yeah, dream game, spend 5 to 15 minutes each day, or as often as you possibly can, live in your dream game to help build those really strong, deep motor neuron tracks within our bodies. What are these? How would you describe this to me? Think about it as one of our kids that we train. What would they be seeing? No takers?
A game, like an Xbox game or PlayStation game?
Oh, yeah, it's a game. It's certainly a game. What about the bottom one? What does that look like for us in everyday life?
Energy.
Yeah, energy, battery life on our phones, for example. So again, this is a really cool little technique which I think players will get across. So how are we protecting our energy, and what is our life force bar like? Playing video games, I can get hit 10 times and I'm starting to lose life eventually. But if I jump on a water bottle, my life goes up. So you got kind of your energy and your life power, or your confidence, and then your energy power. So think about those energy and confidence meters. I guess the challenge to us as players and coaches is we can't always be at 100% energy, and our confidence sometimes wavers between high and low. So it is our task as coaches to hopefully raise energy and raise confidence, but ultimately each individual athlete have to drive this themselves. So let's take let's have a look. Let's see. Yeah, let's go with confidence first. What are some things that we can do, or athletes can do, same as us as coaches, to improve our confidence? Because I'm assuming we want each athlete to come into the game. Let's just use the game as the main thing. The most confidence they can be. We would rather have a confident athlete than a low confident athlete. I assume everybody will agree with that, right? So how can we get the players to arrive at the change room before the match as confident as they possibly can? What are some things that we can ask them to go away and do before they get there?
They can visualize when they had success, winning, scoring, things like that.
Yep. Okay. Maybe think of it like this. Maybe think the opposite. Think about ourselves, right? When do we feel low in confidence about a task or a situation?
Because when we don't have the expertise, maybe, or
Yep.
the skill.
Cool. So we might not have the information, the skill, the experiences. Okay. What else?
When it's not going the way that we hope it needs to go.
Okay. Yep. So all of those things, I'd say, okay, well, sometimes if we don't have the experience, the thing about you now as a coach, right? So, um, have we provided all the we don't give all the, especially, well, it depends on the stage we're working at. Like development level, we don't want to give away all the answers because we want them to sort of experience failure and all that stuff as well, right? And we could live with them being low on confidence for a period of time. But certainly when they get to the where performance matters, we want them to feel completely equipped with the knowledge of the game plan and awareness of what we believe the opponents are going to do. They should feel like they know their role and responsibility perfectly. They're comfortable with what's been asked them at set piece time. All these things kind of comes back on us to prepare them through the week. But if we flip it back on the athlete and go, are you prepared? Have you asked questions throughout the week? Is there anything else you still need to cover off before we go out and play? Have you, thought about your, dream game performance? Kind of hopefully removing some of those barriers and those concerns. Mohsin, Mohammed, sorry, what did you just say? I had another train of thought.
I said when things don't go the way that we wanted to.
Yeah.
The low confidence.
So when things don't go the way, how can we help them improve that? Who, or maybe a better way of saying this, who can help with that?
Maybe explain it in a different way that they could understand what you're trying to get to them.
Yep. Anybody else? What about if they knew that the coach was completely okay when things didn't go their way? It's okay. Like, fine. Good opponent, good team, or problem we didn't experience. It's okay if it didn't work out. No one's going to yell at you. No one's going to have it. You're not going to get subbed off. Maybe teammates can get around that player as well. So again, the culture of environment that we have, especially working with developing players, if they know, if they can have the confidence in their teammate and their coaches that they've got their back, there's no negative consequence for testing things out or trying things out, as long as it's part of the game plan, part of their script, part of whatever. Then hopefully, again, these are things to try to alleviate the things that drag confidence down. So without going into too much detail, there's some good ideas in the book around this. We're trying to get players to arrive at 100% confidence. And it won't always be at 100%, but we certainly don't want players rocking in at 50% because they're unaware. They don't feel prepared, or they don't feel an environment that they can, they're on edge. They're anxious because of the environment that's been created. So again, trying to get our players to arrive with high confidence. What about energy? So the gas in the tank, right? What are some things that athletes should be taking responsibility on, that they turn up to the game, with the gas tank fully filled up rather than half tank?
Eating well before the game, so their diet they're looking after, and they're having drunk enough liquids as well before the game.
Yep, food and water, perfect. What else?
Good amount of sleep the night before the game.
Yep, absolutely. Sleep. Anything else?
Got all the gear, make sure they packed it overnight, or they haven't forgotten anything, shin pads or those kind of things. Maybe just being organized so they.
Yep, organized so they're not running late, they're not rushed, they're not stressed because the 5 minutes behind schedule and got traffic. They've built that into their plan. I'd say things like they've done their 2 gym sessions throughout the week. They're at physical optimal preparation leading into it. They've had good recovery. They've had their good sleep and hydration. All these things around, and you think about yourself when you've turned up the day to a day of work not at 100% physically. Of course, our performance is going to be not at 100%. So same with our mental and confidence capacity. We want our physical and energy capacity to be high as well. And there's again, these are things that we need to push back to our players, that they take responsibility. But again, if you want to gamify it a little bit, we can use those, life bars or confidence bars and energy bars we want to make sure that they're finding ways to. And again, my confidence and my energy might be a little bit different to Kate. Again, that's the role and the skill and the art of the coach. It can't just be a blanket approach, but in general, you can have a blanket approach, and then each individual athlete might, test different things out and find what works for them.
There's a question, Gareth.
Please.
So would you say, like, before a game, would you say staying away from technology or phone and just taking the time to think and lock in, for example, would be a good technique to tackle this, stay focused and aware?
Look, I don't have I can't give you a definitive answer because I genuinely believe everybody is slightly different. So I've been in changing rooms as a coach and as a player where some people need music to get themselves up and about. I had a teammate that would literally sleep on the bench in the changing room with the music going because that was the way he was able to like deregulate. Some people love their phone and, that's an escape. It's a mental escape. But we'll talk about in the second round pre-match routines. I think as long as a player can arrive at the kickoff whistle, 100% ready to go, knows their roles, fully energetic, part of the team, good teammate, engaged, lived in the now. I don't think there's one particular method to get to that point. I think everybody will be slightly different, and how for us as coaches, right, how we navigate that hour and a half before kickoff when the players arrive or however long you have. You've probably seen it yourself, and certainly those who've played. Like, there's no one. We're not all the same. We're completely different about that. So that's my thoughts on it. I don't know if anybody else has got any other thoughts.
I might be imagining this, but I'm sure there's a study being done over the last couple of years in terms of if people are able to, well, it's something around the performance and like away from technology, so like scrolling, Facebook, etc., like negatively impacts performance when athletes are on their phones or are on social media, etc., prior to a game. I'm not sure the name of that study, but I'm sure they've come out and said around that. It's yeah, I'm not sure if you're able to look that up. Sorry, I'm just on my phone. I can't do it, but yeah.
Yeah, there's certainly, the longer social media is around, the more, I guess, information comes out that it's, again, going to have more negative hormone release than positive hormone release, right? I think that's probably a given. And with that, I guess, by being on your phone is going to give you more negative stuff than positive stuff. So it's probably not a good idea to do that. Whether or not we enforce that, again, that's not my personal stance on that as a coach. So, but yeah, it's certainly something to consider. I don't know. Does anybody have that rule in place as coaches that we, the locker room, for example, is a phone-free space? It is a requirement for international and professional football because of the betting and kind of accessing information or sharing inside information to people who can put bets on based on, oh, so and so's not playing or so and so's just got injured in the warm up. So you're actually not allowed access to your phones. Partly why I'm probably not thinking around it being a negative impact around preparation because the environments I've been in recently that's not part of it anyhow. But yeah, anybody got any other observations or thoughts? Yeah, we'll try and find that, Mohammed, and share it across. Just moving through, I'm conscious of time. So ANTS, automatic negative thoughts, so ANT or ANTS. So a really good technique here. So if you think about ants and a whole heap of ants, an infestation of ants that takes over your path, it makes it really difficult for that path to act as a path, right? There's too many ants in the way, people won't walk on it, they'll step over it, etc. So I guess the technique here is to alleviate or eliminate having massive amount of ants, massive amounts of negative thoughts. The first thing to take under consideration is the brain is actually hardwired negative more than it is positive. So we will have a negative thought 8 times more likely than a positive thought unless we consciously think in a positive way. So automatic, no one's thinking about it. These thoughts are just appearing. So there's huge numbers about, there's numbers about huge volume of thoughts on any given day. And 80% of those will be naturally negative. So you probably weren't aware of it, but you might have been. But even within the last 10 minutes, you've probably had a negative thought about me or this presentation so far today. Man, he talks a lot. There's too many words on the slide. I don't agree with that. How long has this got to go? As examples, right? I don't know where everybody's at with that, but now you can become aware of it. You can catch yourself having these negative thoughts. So if I go back to the release of hormone example at the beginning, every negative thought, every ant will release a drop of a negative hormone. It's going to slow us down physically. It's going to make us less competent in whatever we are doing in that particular day or that task. So the key here is to squash the ants before they become an infestation. So the technique is called spot, stop, shift. We want to spot the ant. So self-awareness. So spot the ant. Oh, that was an ant. Okay. Oh, that's not very good. And then you go stop it. Okay, I don't have a second ant. So I don't want to allow these ants to multiply and become an infestation. And then to do that, I shift my thinking to something positive. Now, it could be you could counterbalance the negative thought with a really positive one. Oh, yeah, it might be going a little bit long, but there's some really good information here. I'm going to use these for my players. That's a positive thought. You can focus on your next action, your next task, whatever that is on the game. You can look down at your script and think, okay, be shark-like, get back on the move. It doesn't matter as long as you're shifting that negative train of thought to a positive one, or at least away from the negative one. It will stop that infestation. So spot, stop, and shift. So by doing this, again, every skill you need to practice it. We started when we did this, even before the national stuff. I was with a regional team. We started getting the girls to call out firstly themselves. Oh, I just had an ant, and someone else to say, oh yeah, I just had an ant too. So it became a bit of a game, a bit of a technique around becoming aware of what these ants are, and obviously how negative they can become in terms of our performance. And then we got them to call each other out. So if somebody would say something negative that was, again, out of their control, wasn't critique that's helping ultimately the team improve and become better, or just a negative thought that's become verbalized, we'll get the players to say, hey, Kate, that was an ant there. You got to shift your thinking now. And then it started to become this thing. And then over time, we had to say, hey, stop calling each other out on this. We're at pretty much now a point where we are consciously aware of ants are occurring. Let's do it internally now and shift our thinking. And it became a bit of a fun game, and then it became, again, became a habit of what we were doing. So yeah, spot, stop, shift with the ants. So a good way to think about this is stop listening to yourself. So I listen to my ant. Start talking to yourself. So start, again, counterbalancing those negative with some positive, or even if you can just add positive thoughts in, it's going to give you that positive release of hormone even before the negative ant arrives. So start talking to yourself. Stop listening to yourself. Yeah, that's that positive self-talk. So Raymond Behind talks about this as well. So you take our surroundings on one side, and let's start at the highest level. So thoughts. So these thoughts, 8,000 of these are going to happen every day. You have the choice. So your thoughts will, through words, through self-talk, generate words either internally, or you will verbalize these particular words, again, positively or negatively. These words then have an impact on actions. So your task, you will do something or you won't do something based on words you're telling yourself or a teammate. Those actions, if you do enough of them, become your habits. And then those habits actually make up who you are. And then who you are has an impact on where you will go in the future. So if you take all that back to the beginning, you could argue an automatic negative thought, could stop you from gaining selection to a World Cup be in your future if you are literal about this potential chain of events. Equally, you could have negative thought and you can self-talk and change it into something positive, and that positive has a positive reaction on you and a teammate. That becomes more often, you build in your racetracks, that becomes who you are, and all of a sudden you are a top 10% within whatever field you're doing because you're doing things really well consistently. So therefore you are a product of your surroundings if you think about it that way as well. So number 7, keep your energy and confidence bars high through using your script and use positive self-talk to squash those ants. Let's move through. So the next one is around our routines, and Stan touched on this briefly a few minutes ago. So again, if you think about the energy that our body flows through us, you can get this from surroundings and through peace and quiet, but also through planning and preparation. We want our energy, we want our focus, we want our whole self to be at optimal. So that's from a physical warm-up, but I'd also argue about, can we have a mental warm-up as well? So think back to routine of the day. Without doing this as a task, maybe it's a task you can think about with your players is, do each of your players have a routine? So are they filling their confidence and energy meters up through good sleep? Do they get up at the same time on game day, or do they sleep in because it's a weekend and they've stayed up till 1 o'clock in the morning? Are they eating the same food at the same time? And what time is that relative to kickoff? Should it change each week based on when kickoff is? Do they arrive at the ground 2 hours early? If they're there that early, what are you getting them to do for that time? Or is it better to actually have them arrive 45 minutes before the game, because then their attention span is less? So again, it doesn't really matter what the answer is, but for us as coaches and ultimately the players we work with, is we should have a match day routine. We should have a plan, and it should be quite consistent across what it is we do. My question to you guys is, should it stop at the physical warm-up and the hard tasks around sleep and eat, warm up 45 minutes before? Is the warm-up, I guess, the warm-up routine, is it the same every single week? What other components do you think are really important for us as coaches and even athletes to drop into our routines on match day?
I think another thing, part of routine, was like to do a pitch inspection. I think you mentioned about like creating roadmaps and like visualization. It's like you do that pitch walk with the team, okay, and you notice what parts of the pitch are good and what parts of the pitch are not. But then, depending on your position as well, do you spend more time on that part of the pitch, and then you visualize what some of your actions might be on the pitch.
Yeah.
And that's part of that mental preparation as well.
No, I love it. Yeah, well, the point there around mental preparation is a key one, right? So we're doing just physical stuff. I think we should, going back to 4 corners, we should also have a mental warm up as well. So maybe that's part of it on the pitch. Maybe it's sitting in my locker, reflecting. 5 minutes of dream game. It's 2 minutes of script. Am I checking in on myself? My confidence high? Is my energy up? Do I need to have a quick power snack to do those things? But yeah, getting out on the pitch and visualizing a corner from one particular side, or free kick, or I'm going to be up and down this touchline this part today, and this is a bit boggy. What does this mean? Yep, it's a really good one. Anybody else can think of something that we can get our players thinking about their routines?
I think maybe more so the coach, but how much information is we as coaches giving our players? Like, we can't 1 week give them a 10-page essay and then the next week do 2 points. So I think maybe just from a coach's perspective, balancing out what we are giving them.
Yep. Cool. I think, for us from an A-League perspective, we would have gone through set pieces, all the slides, and where people need to stand. But some people don't want to know that yet. So it's printed off. It's in a private area of the change room, and we are accessible to talk through it if you want. We're not going to be here. Have you looked at your set pieces? Blah blah blah. But again, it's up there. It's there if they need to. It's I know that some players are always in the exact same position for set pieces, and they haven't changed for 2 seasons, but they're still up there reviewing it because it's part of their routine to ensure that their confidence is up. Yes, I am where I need to be. It is what I'm still thinking. So, yeah, like players will be different, and that's perfectly fine. I think we've just got to create a space where they can execute upon their own plan. Some of that will be bound by team stuff and team times, but I think we need to be respectful that each individual can have their own individual routines. But certainly thinking about a mental warm-up and building that now into our allocated time and encouraging those players to go through a mental warm-up before they get out into the physical warm-up or after. I don't necessarily know when the best time for that is, but we should still be encouraging this. And again, there's a whole lot of tools that we've looked at already that they can start to implement as well. So yeah, create a match day routine. That's going to help with lower cortisol, lower stress because it's familiar. But it needs to have certain things: physical in there, mental in there, hydration in there, confidence in there, energy. All these things we've spoken about, and that you want them to arrive at kickoff whistle at 100% of all of these things, so they can go and give the best possibility of controlling themselves to give a performance that they're happy with. Similar to confidence, but different, is stress and pressure. So this is something that I took from the All Blacks. So every elite athlete, or even developing every athlete, including elite athletes, will experience pressure. And some people seem to thrive under pressure, and some go in their shell. But even the top athletes in the world will be impacted through stresses and pressures throughout the game. So again, some of you might agree with this or disagree with it, but pressure is a privilege because it means you're playing at a level that you are being challenged at. So if you were playing, if you went back and played under 12s community football now, you would probably not feel much pressure because our players are performing at a level higher than that already. But if you went and played, you made your A-League debut, you're naturally going to feel pressure. But if we can frame that as it's not a bad thing, it's actually, a recognition of the level that you are now at, or you're in a cup final for your division. There's something tangible, and those sort of nerves and anxiety are kind of our body's way of saying, hey, we've got something really important here. So even more reason for athletes to be doing all the preparation to get to the kickoff and feel like they are 100% prepared. Their confidence is up, their energy is up. So if the confidence and energy is up, they're more likely to mitigate these pressure moments. The pressure situation will be less on them. It still might be there, but the objective is to have less pressure collectively on your team than the opponent. The opponent's also going to feel pressure for these same situations. So how do we mitigate our pressure? But when we can't do that or get it wrong, then there's some ideas around how we can get it back. So the All Blacks, a guy called Kerry Evans, I spent a bit of time with in Christchurch as well, came up with the concept of blue head, red head. So you can Google and have a read through of that. But basically, athletes want to stay in the blue as often as they possibly can. So again, we'd normally go through this with the players, but redheads would be I'll start with blue. So blue head thinking is clear, we're focused, we're in control, we're confident, relaxed, we're in the now. I'm doing my job. Everything is going well. It's fine. We're on top of things. I'm talking to my teammates. My head's up. I'm aware of my surroundings. Kind of where we would normally find things with these like low pressure situations. But pressure situations will happen. The game, the crowd might get on top of us. We might, hopefully we're not losing control of what's controllable for us, but things will happen. And when this red head starts to come upon us, These are things, are the emotions that we'll experience. We get distracted. We become emotional. You think about, I certainly have heard it described as the red mist comes across somebody and they have a bit of a brain snap and they kick out at somebody. That's because their brain and their emotional situation is completely cluttered and clouded with these sort of anxiety moments, rather than we're clear, we're blue. I don't need to react to what the opponent's trying to do to me at this stage. I'm just going to get back to my task. So, yeah, redhead will happen. The best athletes in the world will get themselves as quick as they possibly can from redhead back into blue, and they'll spend 90%, 95%, 98% of their time with blue head, knowing that when they go to redhead, they've got some tools to get them out of that and into blue. The players or athletes who don't obviously make it as often will have more of their time where they're in this redhead situation. So I guess how do we do that? There's a couple of tools and techniques, and I might actually just bring up my notes on this one because I want to get this really accurate for you guys. So yeah, this is again coming straight from the literature. So firstly, accept that mistakes are going to happen. So you can be accepting of that, and then you just want to create a process to get back and control your mind. One of the key ones the All Blacks speak about is never doubling up on your mistake. So if you think about it in a football situation, I've given the ball away or I've been tackled, and I'm really pissed off about it. I'm going to sprint after the guy tackling in the ball, and quite often I tackle him, aggressively or illegally, and I give away a free kick. So instead of just giving the ball away, now I've given a free kick away, potentially a yellow card, and potentially in a situation where it's really dangerous from a goal scoring situation, as opposed to accepting that I've given the ball away. I'm going to sprint back really hard because I can control that to press and limit or get back behind the ball, but I'm not going to be stupid and create the second error, double up on my mistake and give away a foul or a free kick in that situation. So it's a big one for the All Blacks, is don't double up on your mistake. Don't overcompensate to make up for the first mistake. Just accept it and then get back to next task. Breathing is a huge one. So some simple breathing techniques. Again, if we sit up in our chair, shoulders back, and I have a long spine, and if you just do some simple box breathing, again, doesn't necessarily matter what the times are, but in for 3 seconds, hold it for 2 seconds, out for 5 seconds is what they use. But again, the breathing element of breathing shifts, a bit like BAM, it shifts our mind away from the issue, the mistake, the problem. So you can BAM, go and high five and reset the brain. But if in a transitional live situation like football offers us, as opposed to free throw and basketball, we don't have that luxury. So again, breathing is really important and helps sort of deregulate some of that anxiety and stress. They say eyes are the next key. So when we are in red head mode or when we have mistakes, very often we look down, and when we look down, we lose the peripheral vision, which is super important for all sports, right? The greater field of vision I have, the more I can process information and make quicker decisions more accurately. When my head goes down, I lose peripheral vision, I get tunnel vision, and I can't see these things. So again, look up. Richard McCaw says I try and spot the 4 corner flags on the rugby field. So I actually have to get my head up and seek beyond kind of what's happening and look around. So I get back into process. So find the 4 corner flags, which again is part of his process to get back into that clear, focused, confident, what's my responsibility, what's my job, live in the now moment, that blue head as opposed to the red head. And for some people, a physical trigger. Again, you see this with pro athletes. They might, slap their leg. Rich McCaw would speak about he would drive his left big toe through his boot into the ground as hard as he possibly could. It was deliberately his left one rather than his right one, and that was like his mental reboot to get back into process. I had Michaela Foster, who her dad was Ian Foster, the All Blacks coach, was one of my 17s players, and she said she would use her right thumb and press on her right thigh like she was flushing the toilet. So it was her mental flush to realise, shit, I've got an ant, or shit, I'm in the red head, or I've made a mistake. Right, flush that, like that physical action of flushing the toilet into her leg. That's her mental flush. Right now, she's got a clean bowl of toilet water, and away she goes again. So there's some different things there, but they're all designed to do the same, which is get you back to present, get you away from the anxiety or stress, don't make things worse. Get your breathing under control, get your head back up and connected to your teammates, and active within the live situation, as opposed to dwelling from that mistake. And again, the more players can get better at managing this themselves, and equally us as coaches can spot this. At any given time, you might have two players in the red. Hopefully, you don't have the whole team in the red, but you can then get information. Hey, stand, eyes up, breathe, four corners, or whatever kind of tool that you might have within your group, and then that might be enough of a trigger for them to go, oh shit, yeah, you're right, I'm struggling here. I'm in the red. I'm not living in the focus, not living in the now. I'm dwelling on my mistake. Or even more so, you can get your teammates, the whole team, to be aware of this, and they can start to manage that themselves as a really powerful group sort of process. So again, accept it, don't double up, breathe, eyes, and that physical, and then do my next job. It's about next task. Don't worry about what's happened. Don't worry about it's coming up too far in the future. What's my next task? What's that gap right between the now and the present? That's the key. That's the next job I need to do. And if I just keep going back to that, I won't dwell on my mistakes. Those ants will stop, and then I give myself the best chance to retain that pressure situation. Becomes less, and then hopefully the other team is impacted by pressure more so than I am. Yes, under pressure, go back to process. Find a process that works, knowing there's some those tools that help with that clarity and provide situational clarity and a clear mind, and allows us to have the ability to do our tasks. Red head, blue heads is a really good one. Again, so much science and stuff goes in the background of all these things, but again, I'm trying to give you a bit of a general overview. Last couple, so the power of reflection, and how and when we utilize reflection. So again, before I go into that, I guess as coaches now, like, are we, we would potentially do a review, but do you have, a set process around reflecting upon performance? Is it, at the final whistle? Is it first session back? Are you showing footage? Are you asking questions? Is players providing something towards the answers, or is it just coach driven? Like, how are you guys using, I guess, reflection as part of your processes?
I think maybe a different type of reflection, Gareth, maybe like, for example, in the football centres at the younger age, in terms of like that sports, like you're not really delving into it, but you can channel where their thoughts go. So something that I like to do at the end, especially with the younger groups, is what was one area that you maybe found challenging today, or what was maybe one thing you did really well? So instead of just reflecting or thinking what can they do better next time, it's actually just going down on what actually they do well and then reinforcing that, because so often we think of those negative things or maybe those area weaknesses we need our young players to improve on, that we quite often forget to then strengthen those strengths, if that makes sense.
Yep, absolutely. Anybody else?
Actually, adding to Kate, is asking players to reflect on others and say something positive on what their teammate did. Again, at football centers, so they're talking each other up in a positive sense and reflecting on other people's performance.
Yeah, cool. For me, I think it's, again, science would say it's a positive tool to do. All right. So, as with anything that's positive, are we doing it? And I think if we do anything ad hoc or every now and then, it probably has less impact than something consistently. So, for me, the consistency is a really important piece to mention. I would argue, I would say that or share from a team perspective, there's an element of reflection that we do that's consistent every week. So in the game, 15 minutes, we have the same 5 questions that we're trying to learn from the first 15 minutes of the game. Is the opposition playing the formation we thought they were? Or if you didn't know that, like, what is the formation they're playing? Where is the obvious space for us to exploit? Where are we most at risk at the minute from the first 15 minutes? Where's our greatest opportunity that we can threaten? And is there any one particular player that is having a shocking day that we can maybe, try to put more pressure on through however we can attack? Those 5 questions are consistent for us. So we're reflecting upon 15 minutes to find those answers, which then hopefully will impact some of the coaching that we can provide the players. Equally, post the game, we'll have the same methods and processes around here's the key stats that we look at every week because of whatever reasons they are important for us. Here's some footage to help show the message. And we're trying to front load that with more positive stuff. Here's some things that we did really well based on the game plan or how we want to do things. And let's see more of this moving forward. Here's 1 or 2 areas that, or examples that maybe we don't want to see as much of, and explain why. And then, so again, using that footage, some data using footage, but also trying to empower the players to also take ownership of their own performances. Do they go back and watch the game back? If they can't do that, then what other ways can they reflect upon their performances? So again, knowing that by doing this does help rather than hinder. So here's some ideas. So again, getting them to think about, if you start to use the script, that's a really good one that they can go, what score have I given myself today for my performance? Now, if I scored 3 goals, but I was super lazy, well, is it a bad performance or a good performance? Well, I think based on what you're trying to work on relative to your task, then you might say, well, it wasn't the greatest. So, but you got it by having something to reflect back on rather than just general stuff. It gives the reflection tool more power and more meaning. So the script is an option. You can think about how well we identifying ants, and then that might move on eventually to squashing your ants or shifting to positive talk. How was my energy bars? Did I arrive at the game as high as we possibly have? I've taken out controllers from this talk, but again, there's a bit of a tool around using a bit like the games. You've got a joystick and a controller, and someone's in the stand is controlling you. You've got 2 controllers, your actions, so sprinting and running and left and jumping and kicking, and someone's controlling body language. So again, it's another tool which is interesting for some people, but I've just taken it out of this one. And then you can go, well, if you were low in these reasons, why? Or equally, if you're scored really high, well, why? What was so good about your process? Can you get in to think, okay, well, this worked for me. Can I add it to my routine now? Or this didn't work for me. Why? I didn't ask enough questions throughout the week, so I wasn't quite as prepared around my opponent as I possibly could. Okay, well, what does that mean for next week? How can I shift my scores from a 5 to a 7 next week? What were some of the emotions or feelings that these things provided? So again, just being, I guess, deliberate around firstly creating a space where you can get players and your team and even us as coaches to reflect. So it's part of our routine. It's consistent as well, but it's sort of given the energy and time to allow it to create positive outcomes rather than just sort of ad hoc. There's something tangible that they can reflect against. It's kind of what the research would say. So yeah, reflect, be tough on yourself, commit to your self-improvement every day to get closer to whatever it is you're trying to achieve. And then last one is the power of the word yet. So am I there yet? We've heard that a lot of times. So again, you could be here, or athletes could be here. And we want them to go down this yet road rather than I'm never going to get there. I'm never going to score today. But just by adding the word yet on the end of any sentence, it just opens up this world of possibility and sort of says, well, I'm not going to score today, or I'm never going to score yet. I'm not going to be fast enough yet. I'm never going to make the national team yet. Well, the yet just provides an opening for hope for, if you go down the never road, well, okay, you might as well just stop doing all these additional tools. But by saying yet, and us as coaches, we can just tack yet on the end of a negative sentence, because there's so many areas of improvement and focus and training that, if they were already there, because they're not there yet, but if they were already there, they wouldn't be playing, let's say, for Melbourne Victory under 14s, they'd be in, Barcelona's academy, for an example, right? So, you're not going to, I'm not there yet. Okay, well, have you filled your confidence meters? Did you squash your ants to the point where they weren't impacting your performance? Have you stuck to your routine today? Have you done analysis on your direct opponent? Have you asked your coach questions around, bringing to life my super strength? Oh, and the list can go on. So just that the power of the word yet kind of opens that sentence, opens the conversation, keeps the player from going down too much of a negative red head ant infestation, and just sort of brings them back to the other side. So yeah, that power of yet is a good one. I'll just sort of whiz through this. So I guess in summary, everybody now is moved along to that second box. You are aware of a lot more mental skills now. A guy called Dan Abrams, and there's a whole lot more research around some of these things, taken from the All Blacks and other things as well. But you're going to be incompetent at these skills. Your players are going to be they might be unconsciously incompetent. They don't know these skills yet, but you might start talking about ants. Until they start practicing it, they're still going to be not very good at it. So my challenge to everybody listening is to take one or two or try them all out in different settings, go away and research some more, and start to bring them to life in your own environments. And then the better you get at those, and then the more that you can add, then you're going to move into box 3. But ultimately, you will help your players in that 4 corners model, where they're going to develop the resilience, some skills, to stay in present, to stay focused, to execute tasks, to have better routine, to deal with pressure better, to take ownership of their responsibility before the game. All these things that are part of youth development. These are part of us as coaches, away from the football field. We haven't spoken anything about technical, tactical. These are still skills that we are helping our young people get better at, to help them become a better athlete, yes, but also they're going to become a better adult in later life. And then hopefully, if they can take these on and use them today, throughout their time, they'll do them unconsciously, and they can it becomes part of who they are. So a couple of these other books from Dan, which are great. Actually, saw Jeff Hopkins walked in last week. I think Kate was last week. He walked past with both these books under his arms, coincidentally. So Soccer Tough and Soccer Tough 2. Really simple reads. It's written in a really easy, clear way where it's for the athlete, but certainly for us as coaches, we can, interpret it as if he's talking to us. Now, obviously, the advanced one, Soccer Tough 2, is a little bit more advanced, but again, some of these, 11 techniques from Soccer Tough 1, Soccer Tough 2, my other experiences, and the first book. So. And there's a whole raft I haven't put in here as well, which for me just haven't resonated as deeply as these ones that I've talked about. But again, they might be great for you guys as well. So I'd encourage you to go and check those out. As Stan mentioned, Dan's a big on X or Twitter, LinkedIn as well. If you give him a follow, some really interesting stuff he puts up on those social media platforms. I'll start to now drip feed them into our WhatsApp group if I come across things I find is interesting. But yeah, I guess certainly trying to use the resources and the tools for us, but ultimately for our players to hopefully now this whole bottom right-hand corner, we feel more confident in speaking to athletes about, and hopefully they can become more resilient, more everything else developed ultimately in here, that they have a better chance of kicking on with their own journey. So I will leave it there because it's only down to two of us. But yeah, I appreciate you guys, John and Kate, for sticking through. Obviously, the other guys dropped off to get to training. But yeah, if there's any questions, John or Kate, that you guys have that I might be able to quickly help you with, I'll just stick it on the line and we'll go from there.
Sorry, I'm
Thanks, Gareth.